This is the Widow Podcast, and I am Karen Sutton, the Widow Coach. I'll be supporting you through the loss of your life partner so you can find a more positive way through your grief. I want to give you hope after loss and to know that when you are ready, you can create a meaningful life for yourself with the help of me, Karen Sutton, and the Widow Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Widow Podcast. I have a very lovely guest, Mr. Boxall, Tim Boxall. You may well recognise the name if you are in Widowed and Rising, my free Facebook support group. Tim is very active in there and very supportive, and has very kindly agreed to come and talk about his loss, his grief, his journey through widowhood after his wife Val died just over a year ago. And I think what's really lovely is I find it quite hard to get men on the show, and I've had a couple recently, and Tim has very kindly agreed to come on and share his story and his experience of widowhood as well. So thank you so much for being here, Tim. It's so lovely to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, bless you. So let's start. Let's go back and tell us a little bit about Val and how she died.
Of course. So we met we met at a nightclub, which sounds horrendously cheesy, doesn't it? But it was, if you take a little step back from that, when we both started work, we just went to separate schools. And we both went straight into work rather than going to university. And we got on a train, the same train, but 2 stops apart. So I used to get on the same carriage as her. And for the 6 to 8 months or so, she'd either sit opposite me or next to me. And commuters tend to get on at the same point every day, don't they? So I used to see her. And then I moved companies. And it was at that point, a bit later on, then somebody who worked with Val came to work with us. She had a birthday and was going to a local nightclub, and she said, a lot of my old work friends are going to come along, and as my new work friends, we'd been new for about a year, do you want to come as well? So we all went as well. I almost actually didn't go because I'd been out for the day, and I said I'd drive, and because I was driving I was picking up a couple of people, but I said yes I would, so I'll pick these people up.
Did you know that Val was her friend, her old? So you'd spoken to her on the train a few times?
No, I hadn't spoken to her on the train. We hadn't spoken on the train at all. It's when you just sit there and you when commuters tend to keep themselves to themselves, don't they? And so we'd be looking out the window. And so we turned up to this nightclub, and people were mingling, and I think I stood next to Val, and it sounds terribly cheesy, even more than a nightclub. I said, I think I know you from somewhere, which is a horrendous chat-up line. And she said, actually, I think I know you from somewhere. And we got chatting, and it turned out it was the 717 to London Bridge or something along those lines. And then she said, I remembered that she had lovely hair, and she used to wear this really nice burgundy coat. And she said, and we used to recite this story to Emma, who's our daughter. And she said, yes, I remember you. You had these bright yellow Sony Walkman headphones and a coat that made you look like Inspector Gadget. And I'm thinking, so first impressions obviously lasted. But yeah, so I contacted her the next day through the appropriate channels of ringing rather than FaceTime, because it didn't exist in those days. And then that was, as I say, that was history. And so we got together. Got married, and then Emma was born in 2005, and we started dating in 94, got married in 97, and then in 2008 we'd only just moved house, and she had cancer for the first time. She discovered a lump and got checked out, and the doctors had said, yeah, we'll refer you on, and she got seen by the hospital. And they said, yes, it's cancer. So they did some surgery. She had radiotherapy, she had chemotherapy. I remember the doctor said it is triple negative, and we then went through the rigmarole and all the horribleness of the chemo and the radio, and came out the other side. And you think, right, you've had your brush with it, and that's it. You've had your one brush with it, and actually you'll be okay. But then mid-pandemic, she was diagnosed again. And this time, by the time they saw her, because of what was happening in the pandemic, unfortunately, it had spread. And they did quickly say, unfortunately, it's only treatable and not curable. So we were having the chemotherapy. She was going for regular basis on that. There was once when she had it and she had a massive allergic reaction to what she was having. It was the first session. And it was a bit like the scene out of Pulp Fiction, where Uma Thurman has the injection to her heart and she suddenly sits up because she was given this chemotherapy and she had a huge allergic reaction and sort of went purple and passed out. And she said then the doctors and nurses pumped her full of steroids and antihistamines, and she said she suddenly went and came back, and they were all standing there looking. And but but it was brilliant. They were fantastic throughout, and they said we can't give you this again. We're going to have to give you something else.
Okay.
So she had the chemotherapy, and at one point she had to have blood transfusions so they could give her the chemotherapy because what she was having was just so powerful. It was just knocking her for six. So she had the chemotherapy. They then gave her surgery, and then that's when they found that it had spread, and it was in 21 of 23 lymph up the side. And then she also just found she was having headaches and feeling dizzy, and that's when they found that she had a tumour on the back of her brain. So she had to go into the hospital on the south coast. She had a tumour removed by surgery. They then carried on with more chemotherapy. And unfortunately, Karen, it was just what she had was just so aggressive. She'd have regular scans, and they were great because they kept a close eye on her. But then they said 2 little tumours have grown in the gap where there was the big one. So this chemotherapy isn't working. And you just keep moving and moving and moving. And then we got to April of 22, and that's when the oncologist said we are in trouble because we are now running out of things to give you, which is working. The stuff we're giving you just isn't doing anything, unfortunately. So we had one more go because she was always a case of, yes, I'll do the next one. She was ever so brave, because as a lot of people listening to this will know that chemotherapy is really brutal and it is horrible. It is a good evil because you are trying to cure people of cancer, but going through it, it's just absolutely horrible. And then so she had this other chemotherapy, and then we had booked actually to go to the Isle of Wight for a week at the start of August. So we had a break whilst we went there. We had to come home a day early because she just wasn't very well. She's okay to start off with, but as the week went on, it was a very, very hot week in August. And as the week went on, she just sort of got progressively worse. So we came home a day early. And then the following week, which was the 19th of August, the oncology team rang because I was meant to take her down for a checkup, on how she was doing. And the oncology team rang and they simply said, the doctor was ever so kind, but he just said, I'm terribly sorry, but we have run out of options. There was nothing more we can do. She'd actually developed leptomeningeal disease, which is cancer of the brain lining, because she said her eyesight was starting to go. She'd gone deaf in her left ear. She was starting to struggle to swallow. She'd had it spread to her hips as well. And so she had radiotherapy on her hips back at the start of 2022 to try and help her mobility and her mobility. And she was just going downhill, Karen. It was just terrible to watch. And so we've been in contact with the local hospice, and they'd been out quite a few times before to help. And then we managed to secure a bed, and then she went into the hospice on Friday, the 26th, the weekend before the bank holiday, and she was there all week. And then the Friday of the 2nd is I would go over in the morning and I'd go and see her, and then friends would pop in the afternoon just for an hour or so, and then Emma and I would pop back in the evening. And then on the Friday we went in and she was unconscious. She'd been on a syringe driver all week, which is something that they give the medication, so the painkillers and everything she needs. It just slowly feeds you the drugs you need because her swallowing had gone. When she was here, I'd be up in the night, up and down, trying to get paracetamol and liquid morphine and stuff, but she was just finding it ever so difficult. So we got into the hospice, and then on the Friday, the hospice staff, the doctors, we'd speak on a regular basis, and the doctors said to me, you told us to tell you to get people in when you need to get people in. Well, you need to start getting people in. And I thought, right. And I think that was when it really walloped me that this is now getting a lot closer than it should be. And so I rang her dad and her brother, and friends came over, And she was unconscious all day long, and her breathing was quite ragged, but she didn't look in discomfort. She was there. And the night before, the Thursday, when Emma and I were there, we always used to sign off with, "Yeah, love you, see you tomorrow, love you, see you tomorrow," and have a kiss and go home. So on the Friday, I had, I'd gone over, like I said. And then in the afternoon, as the time went on, when people kept coming and going, and we were all getting very upset, because of, you think, well, how long is this going to last? And lots of tears. It was, it's just horrible. And then about quarter past, 4:30, I remember speaking to the nurses and saying, I think her breathing's getting a bit more ragged. And they came in and they had a look and at her fingers, and they said, yeah, her fingernails are starting to go a bit blue. And they said, we think she's starting to shut down. So I gave Emma a call and said, Emma, can you come back? Because she'd come home. And one of my friends then gave Emma a lift over. And I was saying to Val, look, she's only half an hour away. She's 20 minutes away, because you can use the Apple phone. I could see where she was coming over. So she got over about 5:00. And we were there, and I went out to get some waters and came back, and I was one side of the bed and Emma was the other side of the bed. And then her breathing went from ragged, and for 10 seconds it suddenly went really shallow as we were just sitting there, and then she just stopped. And that was, and I think I said, I think she's gone, I think she's gone, which looking back is just, I don't know why I was saying it. But it was just one of those horrible situations. It was just dreadfully stressful. And you just don't know what to do. You are watching somebody for the last 2 years die in front of you, and then you're there when they die. And it's just, you just don't know what to do.
No.
You sort of, your mind is going in a million different directions. And then, Emma and I sat there for a bit, and then we came home. And you're just in complete shock. You just cannot fathom that this has happened. It's just terrible. And even now thinking about it, you just don't know what to do. And you think, and I remember when she went into the hospice, the Friday before she went into the hospice, and then she went in, and I was talking to a friend, and I said, I failed as a husband, because I should keep her out. I should look after her, and I couldn't. So it was, yeah,
That must be
that was
so
that,
hard.
that was difficult. It was very,
Yeah.
very, it was difficult.
Did she talk about the end and what she wanted? Did you
No,
have
we
those
didn't.
conversations?
It's one of those. It's an interesting one, because after she died, you're looking for as much help as you can do. So I know, and signing up to your website, listening to your podcast, I found that, and I joined Widowed and Young. And I think I looked at the Sue Ryder website and Cruise for bereavement support, and you just reach out, because there isn't that manual of life that says, when your spouse dies, this is how you'll be feeling and this is what you should be doing. You have to do the legal things, because they come along very quickly, and you have your documentation that says, you should be doing X and Y and Z. But actually, the emotional part of it is just, it's just, you're just trying to walk through treacle, aren't you, about what you do and what you don't do. And you speak to your friends, and you speak to anybody who's been through it. And it's just difficult. But no, we didn't talk about it. I did say on the Thursday when she was in the hospice, that I'm ever so pleased that we met together, and I love you very much, and you've been brilliant, and don't worry, Emma's just an absolute testament to how you've been, of how how you've brought her up, and how we've worked together with her, and what a wonderful wonderful person she is. And she said, oh no, don't talk about that now, because that makes me upset. And it's one of those things, isn't it? I didn't want to sit there with her earlier in her, when she was going through cancer, and say, oh, you could be dead in a year. Is there anything you want to do?
Yeah.
Because you don't ever want to admit that you're dying. And I think that was the thing. I never ever wanted to admit to myself that she was dying. And
So
it's
hard.
difficult.
So hard. And so that feeling of being a failure, that you couldn't save her, make things better
Yeah.
for her, is that's obviously not rooted in anything Val said to you that she wanted or didn't
No.
want. It's from within, because you feel like, a
Yeah.
husband to wife
Absolutely. Yeah,
relation.
absolutely. As a husband, it's, I should be, you protect your wife, you look after her, you protect your family, you do what you can for your family to make sure that they have the best life, and you do everything you can to keep that going. And it's one of those things, and you think I've not been able to I can't look after you, and you have to go into somewhere that can look after you, and you think I've failed as a husband, and you just felt a failure. But that on reflection now, and you talk to people and say, well, and I realised that she was very, very ill. She was very, very poorly,
Oh.
and actually being at home, it just wasn't working, unfortunately.
Do you,
And she'd said in when she'd spoken to the hospice initially when they were coming out, because you do fill a form as what your requests are, and she said she didn't want to die alone, she didn't want to die at home, and she didn't want to die in pain. So
oh,
she wasn't at home, she was in the hospice. She wasn't in pain because she was unconscious, and she didn't look like she was thrashing around or struggling because she was done everything. And she didn't die alone. So the people who loved her the most were there, and the people she loved the most were there. So that gives me a bit of comfort now. But at the time, you just don't know what to do, Karen. You just feel helpless. You feel, this is the worst thing, apart from anything happens to Emma. This is the worst thing ever, and
mm,
I just don't know what to do. And
yeah.
who do I speak to say what can I do, because it's just absolutely horrendous, absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, it's not talked about, is it? It's very difficult to talk about and have
Yeah,
these sort of open and honest conversations, isn't it? And I think as well we're very led by the person who's not well, who is
absolutely.
dying,
Yeah,
and and you know, you may have things that you want to talk about, but if you're not sensing that that's something they want to do,
yeah,
or a conversation they want to have, you respect that, don't you? And then, but it's difficult when they are gone, because you think, oh, should I have said something? Should we
absolutely,
have had the
absolutely.
conversations?
Yeah, yeah,
And all the unknown, I suppose, is very difficult. But like you say, when we reflect back, it's trying to remember that we were doing our best
yeah,
with what we had and what we knew at the time, rather than sort of
yeah.
berating ourselves. But
Well, I work with a couple of people. One of them doesn't work with me anymore. He's left, but he's gone through it. And there's a guy I work with who's also gone through it. And the people at Widowed and Young, who we meet up on a regular basis, the local Widowed and Young, because the one of the breast care nurses suggested Widowed and Young. Because she said it's people who you can speak to face who have gone through exactly the same thing, and you chat through with them, and you speak to people and say, I felt like this, and is that right? Not is that right, but I felt like this, and is that the way you were feeling? And a lot of people say, yeah, it's a bit like when Val was dying at the end. It wasn't that sort of moment that you see in films where the sunlight comes through the window and a dog jumps on the bed, and everybody's like round the bed sort of holding hands and listening to nice music. It's not like that at all. You just think this can't be happening, and you just don't know what to do, and you feel lost. Really, you just feel absolutely lost.
when you meet others that have been through something similar, do you feel more comfortable talking to a widower, so a man, than you do a widow? Do you feel there's a difference in your grief in any way, or how you manage that process of losing somebody you love as a husband?
Yeah, I think having the contact with the couple of guys who've been through it does help, because you understand from their perspective, and both of their losses were through cancer as well. And you speak to them, and then you realise that actually, yes, you're not alone in this. You are unfortunately part of a club nobody wants to join, where you've got guys who and you know men are, and I'm probably the same. Men are dreadful at going to the doctor, aren't they? I went to the doctors quite a while ago now, and they said, "You haven't been here for a while." I was like, "No, because I've just a lot of the stuff. You think, oh, I'll be okay tomorrow," and you just carry on, and you don't then do anything about it. But actually speaking to them really helped, and speaking to widows as well, because you can talk about people who are in the same position.
Yeah,
That's the thing, and it doesn't matter how your husband or wife died. You are talking to people who have suffered a dreadful, dreadful loss, and they
definitely.
feel terrible. And you can you can talk about things that you feel comfortable talking about with them,
Yeah.
and the little things, and the little things that you realise actually were big things. Um,
Yeah.
that's the thing. That's the thing that even now, and I mean, Val died in September of last year, but even now, there's the little things as you're doing around the house, and it just wallops you out of nowhere. Because I remember her saying when she used to be here, and we would talk, and she said I feel robbed of my future. I feel robbed that I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to do that. But you always have that, and I guess this is the thing. I always had that hope that the next chemotherapy, there will be that 0.01% that it works.
Yeah.
You'll not be you'll suddenly you'll improve, you'll get better. But the thing is, Karen, the triple negative breast cancer is one of the most aggressive, and it's just very, very difficult to treat. And
Mm.
unfortunately, they couldn't do anything about it. They were great. The NHS were fantastic. They did everything they could.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's just nothing they could do.
It's hard, isn't it? Because I think we all have to have hope. There has to be
Yeah, yeah.
something to
This is
hold
it. It
on
keeps you
to.
going, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the normality side of it as well, because I would still be working, because I work from home. I'd still be working, and still helping Emma out, and she'd be still going to college. And my company were fantastic. My employer were brilliant. It was a case of do what you need to do, Tim, and take what time you need to take.
How
And
quickly
they
did
treat
you
you.
go back after Val's death?
Um, I went back. I think she died in September. I went back at the start of December, part time, and then went back full time at the start of this year.
Wow.
But they've been brilliantly supportive,
Yeah.
because they treat you as a person who has suffered a life event, which
Yeah.
is what you have done. They were just brilliant,
That's
and they still are.
amazing.
To be honest, they still are brilliant. Yeah, it's nice, and everybody who I work with, although a lot of it is remote, are you have your colleagues, and your colleagues become your friends, and they're all concerned about you. And friends as well who are here, have been brilliant. They want to help, and they
Mm.
want to do what they can to help. And a lot of
Yeah.
the time, it's me just talking to them about Val, and they would join in, and we'd sit around and talk about her. And you remember her fondly, and talk about the good times together, because that's what you want to remember, isn't it? But they have been brilliant. Friends have been brilliant.
That is amazing, actually, because it's not always the case for people, especially with work, but also with friends.
Yeah,
You can feel that you are surrounded by people that just don't get it. They don't
yeah,
understand. They don't know how to support you. You get through that first year, and then they expect you to magically just be
yeah,
okay again
yeah,
and have it all together. But of course, you're not. It's still really hard. But we kind of talked a little bit about sort of holding on to hope when Val
yeah.
was ill. After she died, what was it that gave you hope in your grief in those moments?
One of the things that I'd always promised is that I'd look after Emma, as you do as a dad anyway. Whatever happens, I'm always going to look after her. But it was that she is my priority now. And when the team rang on Monday, Monday rang on the Friday to say there's nothing more we can do. I remember Val sitting down with Emma and saying, "Look, you've got to promise me you're going to be the best person you can be. You're going to work hard. You're going to really enjoy your life, and you're going to go out and live your life." And that, I think, potentially was when she realised that she didn't have long left.
Yeah,
And all at the same time, I'm trying to keep it normal by you're doing the tea and the breakfast and the lunches, and yeah, giving lifts to and from when she wants to see her friends and stuff, because you're trying to keep normal life going.
yeah,
But yeah, so the hope is, I mean, I think I can think a lot more rationally now than I could at the time.
yeah,
And I found that just talking to people, talking on you
mm,
know your Facebook page, meeting up with the widowed and young, and just talking to people about
yeah,
it.
yeah,
You always get a slightly different view,
yeah,
but the people who have the widows and the widowers potentially give the same view. But your friends, they will, like I said, they try to help, and they
mm,
will do everything they can to help, which is great. And you do take that, anything
yeah,
they can do. So they come around our house, or should we do this, or should we do that, or we can go out, or what would
yeah,
you like to do? What would you like to do? You tell us, and we
yeah.
can help you, which is
That's
which
so
is just really great.
lovely. How have you? Because Emma 17 when her mum died.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Um. So how did Val's death impact your relationship with Emma? Did you come together in your grief? Were there times when you sort of pulled apart? Did you protect each other from each other's grief? What did that look
Yeah, I
like?
think, we definitely have been closer. I remember the Sunday after the Friday, and I sort of made a tea, and I served it up, and we both sat here at the table and just looked at each other and cried, and thought we can't eat this. It was, and but we'd try and do lots together, and her friends as well have also been great, and Val's friends who knew me would and do continue to reach out. They check up on me. Oh, what are you doing, and are you doing this, and you doing that? But Emma's, we did actually go on holiday earlier this year. We had planned back in 2020 to go as just as a city break to Amsterdam, and then Emma had finished her A levels, and she said, "Will she do something after my A levels?" And I said, "Yes, yes. What do you like to do?" And you think of all the places you went as a family, and you're thinking, "I don't really at the moment want to go back to those." And we had, like I said, we suggested Amsterdam, and she said, "Will she do Amsterdam then?" I said, "Well, yeah, actually, why not? You're 18, so if you want to stop and have a drink and look about, you can do." And so we did Amsterdam for a few days, and because it was somewhere that Val hadn't been with us, it was different. I mean, we must have said, hundreds of times, "Oh, Mum would have loved doing this, and Mum would have done this, and Mum would have done that, and Mum would have the other," and smiled and and laughed about what she'd done. But there's always that tinge of sadness that she should be here enjoying it with us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we've got a very close relationship now. She's at university, so we speak twice a week on FaceTime. We text every day. And it's nice that it has developed that way,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's gone that way rather than we've drifted apart.
Yeah, definitely. It's just lovely, and I think the fact that she continued with her A levels, finished her A levels, has gone off to university.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Like that is incredible. When her
Yeah,
mum has died in the
I know.
middle of all that, it actually makes me
Absolutely.
feel quite emotional. But I just think, and that's testament, isn't it, to you and Val, and how you have brought her up, and how you have navigated your grief,
Thank you.
and what you have given her to make her the person that she is. And
Yeah,
and I say, she's amazing. She's clearly very resilient, she's brave, she's just awesome. I don't know her, but just from listening to you talk, I admire her hugely.
thank you.
But I know underneath all that is a lot of pain and
Yeah,
heartache as well. And I think when we spoke before, what was really lovely as well, Tim, that you shared that when she went off to university, actually, and she started meeting the people that she was
yeah,
sort of with,
on the same halls with.
yeah, they were all going through stuff.
Yeah, and this is what I said to her. I said, because we both had counselling after Val had died. My employer offered it, and the hospice as well offered it. So I had counselling with the hospice. I had it with my employer, and then you run through the sessions and you talk and what have you. And then when she was going to university, and I said to her, there will be people who you meet. I said, there's however many kids go on a yearly basis, and everybody will be fighting a battle behind the scenes. Um, some will be in probably a worse position than you. Um, and then when she was talking to me, she said, this is exactly that's probably what's going to happen, isn't it? So it is one of those things that, yeah, you know that, and even now, I'm very conscious, and I've always been very conscious that when you meet people on a face to face basis, somebody is going to be fighting something behind the scenes. So
Yeah,
just be kind, because you don't know what is going on behind the scenes of someone's life, do you?
you don't.
But yeah, she's settled in well. She's having a great time, to be honest.
Is she?
Yeah, she's having a whale of a time there. It's like, which is brilliant. And this is what you want, isn't it? As a parent, you want them to go and enjoy their life, and it's and have a life, have a really good life. And the fact that unfortunately Val isn't here, is it always makes me sad, because she would have loved to have seen Emma doing this. She'd have been so proud to see her go off and go to university and just really, really enjoy it. And,
Yeah,
and that's what a vow that's always going to live in her, isn't it?
it is. And I think it's everything, isn't it? Everything becomes bittersweet. You're obviously so proud of Emma, and you're loving
Oh,
watching
absolutely.
her
Yeah.
live her life and go after her dreams. And then there's the part of it for you. You said earlier that, Val felt she was robbed of her future, but
Yeah,
now that must be your truth as well. I know you said that to
yeah,
me when we spoke, because now, this is a time, isn't it, when you and Val would
it
have,
is. It is.
yeah,
Yeah,
had that
and
time.
you do say to people, this is the thing, and you do say to people, you go through your, you have your couple stage when you get together. Then you have your family, and then as your family, they grow up, they move out. You're still involved in their lives, but then you have your couple stage. And I've said to people, yeah, you feel very once, it's a raft of emotions. You feel very, very bitter and very, very angry
Mm,
to say that the future that we planned has been taken away, and it's not through any choice.
yeah,
We've been robbed of a future together.
yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
that's what and then and again, you shouldn't feel bitter, but you then, when you go out into town or whatever, you walk around and you do see couples and you see families, and you think that's what we should have been.
Yeah, yeah, and that brings up all kinds of emotions, doesn't it?
Yeah,
And the jealousy and the resentment. And how do
yeah,
you navigate all of that, Tim? What do you do with all of the big emotions? How do you express
yeah.
them?
I try to do. I mean, I go running twice a week, or I have been running twice a week, possibly a little bit more. Um, I try and keep busy as much as I can do, trying to keep busy and focused on other things. I mean, there are times when you can't, but it's one of the things is especially the weekends, because the weekends now can drag. So it's planning, isn't it? It's I plan as far in advance as I can do to see friends or to do things or to go out, because you don't want to sit at home and feel lonely. So you just, I don't know, I just try and keep a lid of them, possibly. But you just try and do things it's the distraction of doing other things,
Mm,
and talking to people. If you go and see somebody, not so it takes your mind off it, but it gives you a different focus for it, doesn't it? A bit like work. Everybody would say when you go back to work, it's you have to concentrate on what you're doing, and it's a different focus, and it takes your mind off it for a bit. But it was a couple of weeks ago when I was coming home from a day in London, and usually you'd be on, you'd be at the platform, and I'd be texting back saying, "Oh, the trains are late again, or they're been cancelled," or and she'd be like, "Oh no, how was your day?" I say, "Yeah, it's fine, blah blah. See you at this time. Okay, do you want me to put the oven on?" Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that it's that whole thing. I'm coming home. You exchange your texts. I'll be home about 7 or what have you. Yeah, great. See you then. And you don't. So, and you come home to an empty house, and it's as you left it in the morning. So it's dark, but the curtains are open. You know
yeah,
that it's as you left it, and that is just another reminder, that it's
yeah,
a new life that I didn't want.
yeah. I hear this so much in the community, just yes, you can keep busy, you can go out, you can see
Yeah,
people, but actually coming home to an empty house, being on your own, not having somebody to share your day with, your adventures
absolutely. Yeah,
with.
this is it.
Yeah, and the house is very quiet, and it's
Yeah,
that silence, isn't it, that is difficult to
yeah,
sit in, but we have to. We
yeah.
can't fill every single moment, because it
No,
would be exhausting, wouldn't it? And trying to find ways of comforting yourself in
yeah.
those moments, I think, is what's important, isn't it? And
And I've done a lot of. I go a lot of. There's a lot of walking. So you go walking at lunchtime, potentially walking in the morning as well. It's just getting out. So I go into the office twice a week now as well, or try to go in twice a week to try and at least then you see other people,
yeah,
and which it's a bit of a social interaction, which is good. And one of the things I did do was read Richard E. Grant's book, which
ah,
was A Pocket Full of Happiness. And I think that's a truth, isn't it? Because I know, sitting here, Val wouldn't want me to be sitting here on my own being miserable. She would want me to go out and do something, because the way I was, one of the ways I was sort of dealing with this, and whether it's the right or not, as I would put myself in the position, well, if I died and she was still here, what would I be wanting for her? I would be heartbroken, even more so if she was sitting here being unhappy.
yeah,
I'd be, please try and do something on a daily basis that brings a smile to your face. And just because you have a laugh and a smile doesn't mean that you've forgotten about me. and likewise, I haven't forgotten about her. But you can, you can be happy and sad at the same time, can't you? It's something that's always going to be carried,
Yeah.
always going to be carried, and always something that will be at the front of my mind. But I can still, someone tells me a joke and I will laugh,
Yeah.
or something happens and I will laugh. It doesn't necessarily mean, that's I've forgotten about it, but
Yeah.
it's I think it's just learning to live with it.
It
Really, that's
is.
what we're trying to do. I'm trying to live with it and carry it forward. And it'll always be part of me, and it'll always be part of Emma. It's just how we can live to it. But like I said earlier, Carrie, talking to people really helps. Talking to people who've been through it. There's the two guys I know um, who have been great, and I did say to one of them, I said, you do. I do listen to what you say and all the texts and WhatsApps we've shared, and I do read them and think, yeah, it's been really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And people at work, my friends, and especially the widow and widower community, where
Yeah.
people will, have you
Yeah.
done this or have you done that or have you tried this or have you tried that, and it's just something that you will, you can talk about, and you can talk about freely, can't you?
Definitely. And I think we learn so much about ourselves, don't we, in our grief,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
and it takes us to places that we didn't know existed. And
No.
equally, I think it reveals parts of us that we didn't know were there as well, because we have to draw on these parts of us.
Yeah.
But it is incredibly hard, and to your point, I don't think it's something that we can do alone. We definitely find our way through with community and the people around
Yeah.
us, and that will look
Absolutely.
different to everyone. But trying to manage it on your own. But I know it's difficult to reach out and ask for help, isn't it? and
Yeah.
and I think I say this more so for men, is my understanding of it. But how do you manage that, in those moments when you're like, I just need somebody, I need to speak to, like, do you find it fairly easy to reach out to
Yeah,
people?
I do. I've got some really close male friends and really close female friends, and I can talk to them. But at the same time, if you're in a sort of a big group of people that you're not necessarily friendly with, I don't want to be sitting there and crying,
Yeah.
because people start sort of looking a bit. I'm looking at my feet and I don't really know what to say because he's sitting there crying. And, "Oh, do you want some beers, Tim?" And you're like, well, no, not really. But do you know what I mean? It's that sort of thing, isn't it? But like I say, fortunately, my close friends and friends understand, and being able to just simply, and I do apologise. I say, I'm sorry, I've just unloaded. And they say it doesn't matter. We'd rather you unload on us and tell us what you're feeling than you just bottle it up and don't speak to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I
But
think
it is that thing. It's and then you're very, very conscious of oversharing. But I guess I find it that it really does help me to
mm,
share the stories of Val. And when you talk to people who knew her and knew her well, and you say, "Do you remember we did this? And do you remember we did that?" And you can remember it, and you can have a smile. And Emma and I do the same thing. Do you remember when we did this with Mum? And you remember that, Mum? And to start off with, I think that was quite difficult for both of us because all you can remember is, especially the last few months of her life when, like I said, Karen, she was just very, very ill. She was
yeah.
very poorly and she was dying. But now, I look back and I think of the times in the past, and I did actually, one of the things I did do, and I know if people have journaled it, but all these memories that would come back, the good ones, I just was filling an A4 book and writing them down as I thought of them
That's
and
lovely.
turning the page over, and just lots of them. I've probably repeated myself, but it was a case, and I think it was because I was afraid I'd forget, and I didn't want to forget.
Yeah.
There's your phone suddenly brings up a photo memory, doesn't it? And I think, oh, I remember that. And if Emma's here, I say, do you remember we did that? And we would say, yes. Do you remember we did this on holiday or did that on holiday? And or something happened that we would smile about, and that's what we're trying to do. Remember the time Mum and I did this, and you laughed, or you and Mum did this, and I laughed, and it's just that sort of thing, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's such a lovely thing to do, because especially if there's things that you've done with your person, it was just you and them, you become
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
sole keeper of the memories, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that sometimes feels a bit rubbish, because as much as you've got them to treasure, there are pieces of the jigsaw that are missing, and they
Yeah.
hold those
Exactly.
pieces,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
can't. So I think to write it all down, and how you remember it is just a really lovely thing to do, because memories do fade.
They do.
over
And the
time.
photos as well, though I know we've mentioned the photos as well, Karen. It's the thing as well is, you put there's lots of photos up. We've got, I put more photos up of Val and Emma and I. But the thing which I find sad is that, she'll always be 50 and younger.
Yeah.
There won't be photos of us getting older together. There'll be photos of Emma as she gets older, but it'll only be that point in time and before. And then, to be honest, when she was having all her treatment and chemotherapy, I didn't really take any photos of her because, she didn't want it and I didn't want it because, she was having steroids, she's having chemotherapy. And unfortunately, she looked like she had cancer. And you don't want to remember that, do you? You want to look at a photo on a photo loop or a photo hanging up and saying, oh yeah, that was when we were on a beach somewhere, or that was when we were doing this, or that was when we were doing that,
Yeah.
and associate your memory. But then the other thing I think does get me sometimes is you suddenly get that we were doing this, and then you think, and I can't do it again.
Yeah.
That's what brings me down. I can't do that again.
Mm.
That's the real sucker punch. And sometimes it completely deflates me. You think, I can't do that again, and I'll never be able to do that again. And that's what the difficult part is.
So
But like I say, friends are very helpful. Friends are, well, should we do this and we do that, and
they put you
it's
through. Yeah.
yeah, you just try and plan a bit, don't you? But I try and plan. I mean, I don't know whether what I'm doing is right, but
Well,
it's
is there a right?
yeah. Well,
It's
is there a
hard.
right? Is there a wrong? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You just try and find my way, I guess.
Yeah, it's doing what feels right to you, isn't it? And
Yeah.
helping yourself. Have you noticed a difference in your grief that from the sort of going into the second year? I talk to a lot of people and they find the second year sometimes harder, where the reality sets
Yeah,
in.
yeah. It's funny you say that. Actually, I was saying to somebody yesterday. Then there was, we were at work, and we were sort of having a chat by the tea machine, and everybody says, how are you and how are you doing it? I said, well, actually, I think it's a bit harder now, because the first year is almost you brace yourself for the first of everything, don't you? It's the first Christmas, it's the first birthday, it's the first wedding anniversary, it's the first this, and then you get past it, and then it's actually, well, this is it, and you feel a bit sort of flatter. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
this year I felt a bit flatter afterwards because, especially as you're coming to this part of the year, you've got Christmas on the horizon. The days are getting darker. Whereas in the summer, you have the windows open and you can hear things going on, and that you could draw the curtains at 5, and that's it. In the summer, you draw the curtains at 10, half 10, and you go to bed.
Yeah.
And now I draw the curtains at 5. I'm not going to go to bed at 5.
No.
I'm going to, and then right, what am I going to do to fill the evening? So you watch films, or you watch, you just immerse yourself in mindless television,
Yeah.
or you speak to your friends and what have you. But it's, yeah, I think the second year I found personally, I think has been harder because, it's that
Mm.
realize like this is it.
Yeah.
This is it. The first is, everything, all the bits that the first year, the blur. Now this is my life.
Yeah.
Now,
And I think that's the key thing, isn't it? And that's what I found in my second year. Like you get through all the first, you do the first year, and you think it's going to be a little bit better, but actually you kind of go,
yeah,
this isn't just a 1 year thing. This is a
no,
lifelong
no,
thing. This is my
yeah,
reality now.
yeah.
And I've got to try and figure that out. And that's tough. What are you going to do this year for Christmas, Tim, and New Year?
Don't know yet. Don't know yet. I will speak to Emma. I'm actually going to go and see her on Saturday. Um, and so no doubt, she'll want you to do a shop for her. And so yeah, Dad turns up with his wallet. Well done, Dad. And it's, I'm going to get all the finest stuff, not the basics anymore, because Dad's here paying for it. So, but you do, don't you? I mean,
Yeah,
yes. I'll be like, oh,
definitely.
that's fun. I've done 2 shops this week. But you do, but but it's nice. But it'd be nice to spend the day with her. I don't know yet. I'll speak to her and say, what do you want to do?
Mm.
Because it's, it's a tricky one, isn't it? I'll say, what do you want to do? If you want to sit in bed all day eating pizzas, we'll sit in bed all day eating pizzas.
Do you not feel that pressure to continue what Christmas was for you?
Yeah, last year we did, and it is difficult, isn't it? Because there's a lot of. I mean, I've always found, even when Val's live, there's a lot of enforced jollity at Christmas, isn't
Yes.
there? It's, you look on everyone's having a good time on the TV, everyone's meant to be having a brilliant time, and you do enjoy it, but it's actually, you should be having a good time. But sometimes you think, well, actually, no, it's not that great.
Yeah.
Sometimes, is it?
No.
Even in normal life, it's not that
Yeah.
great. Christmas Day isn't necessarily that great.
No.
and even more so now. And it's a really, a stark reminder that you would enjoy yourself as a family, and there's a person who is missing. And then going back to what we were saying about this is it, then I think to myself, well, for the next 30 years, this could be it. This could be how it is for 30 years. And I'm sure that it won't be. And you'll work to go through it. But you do have these thoughts and think, well, is that it now? Is that it for the next 30 years? This is how I'm going to feel.
Yeah. It feels permanent, doesn't it? Like it's
It
just
does. It
never.
does. It feels,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's when we talk at when we sit in the widowed and young meetings, when people chat about their experiences, and I get, everybody's individual, although there is that common factor of everybody is just dreadfully sad that their other half has died
Yeah, definitely. Exactly.
way before their time. Way
Yeah.
before their time.
Yeah. But just knowing that, having that, and that understanding below the level, it just brings such a sense
Yeah,
of belonging and comfort, doesn't it, in a world where we
absolutely.
feel like we're maybe not that well understood. What do you feel, what do you see, Tim, now when you look into the future, and maybe it's too much and you don't do go too far into it as yet, but what does that bring up for you when you think about what's
I,
ahead?
at the moment, Karen, I don't really know, to be honest. I mean, it is a case of still taking it day by day.
Mm.
And people say, "How you doing?" So I'm just plodding on.
Yeah.
But you can think. One of the guys I spoke to, whose his wife died back in 2006, 2007, and he said to me, he said it probably won't feel like much at the moment, but the rawness does get less, the intense feelings get less. He said you don't forget, and you'll never forget, and you'll always carry it, but the sucker punches that floor you space out a bit, and the rawness of grief sort of subsides a bit. It's something you learn to live with it better,
Yeah.
and you learn to carry it better.
Yeah.
So at the moment, it's a case of wanting to help Emma get through university and what she's going to do with her life. So you've got that focus. But like I said before, I know Val wouldn't want me to be sitting there being miserable. She'd want me to be doing what I could.
Yeah.
So it's, and to honour her and for that sort of thing, then I would, it's just carrying on. And I guess at the moment, it's probably a bit too early to decide.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, it's a difficult one
Yeah.
to answer, I think, at the moment.
It's
I'd want to say that my vision would be this, but at the moment, my vision isn't anything. It's just really getting through
yeah.
what I'm going through.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just focusing on the now and what works for
Yeah.
you now, and sort of that one step at a time. And as much as well, you don't know what you want, but it sounds like you know what you don't want. And
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
It's the little things that we've just had some work done to the garden, and it's the other thing we were talking about. And these are the things that only crop up now, aren't they? If you're going to do a bit of expenditure, usually you'd sit down between the two of you and you'd sort of work out the pros and the cons, and shall we do it or shan't we do it? And then, well, actually, that's all on me. So I'm hoping I'm making the right decision,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of thing, isn't it? That you want somebody there to bounce an idea off. Should we be doing this or shouldn't we be doing this? And when Emma says, I'm going to be doing this, it's a case of, well, I think I'm saying the right thing by saying yes or no. I don't know. But the two, as a parents, you bounce it off and say, well, I don't think so. Well, yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
And it did actually crop up the other day when I was filling in a form, and it says marital status. And for the first time, I put widowed.
Mm,
And that sort of
hurts.
brings it home.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And that's the like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but then you have other silly things that you think about, and a bit like, actually, who's my emergency contact number?
Yeah.
And you think, oh, blimey, I've not really thought that far ahead. But
Yeah.
because usually you put your husband and your wife or
Yeah.
your partner or
Yeah.
whatever, and I think, well, who is my emergency contact number? I don't know, and I've got to think about that now. That everything, if something happens, who to speak to, and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So it's difficult. It's all these little things that suddenly you'd never ever think of, and suddenly you've got to be faced with it. I think.
Yeah, I know, and like you say, it is those little things, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know,
which are actually big
such a
things.
big things. Yeah, exactly. The big little things, as they say.
Yeah,
So, what what would you share with others, Tim, that are navigating grief? I think a big thing for you probably is friends and community, and
yeah,
reaching out and
absolutely.
finding people,
Yeah,
because that's clearly been huge in your journey and still
yeah,
is,
absolutely, absolutely.
and
I,
that's
I would I
amazing.
would say, you know, reach out to people. Don't not speak. Don't be afraid to ask for anything.
Mm,
People, what I've learned is people want to help.
yeah,
People have massive sympathy, massive empathy, and they want to help. They just don't know how to,
yeah,
because unless you've experienced it, you don't know how to.
no,
But so let them be guided by what you want, and what if you think, actually, can I just come around your house in the evening and watch television with you? Most people say, brilliant. We've been waiting for you to say to us what you want to do. Come round our house and watch a film, or we'll go shopping, or we'll go out for the day, or we'll go to the pub, or we'll do X, or we'll do Y, we'll do Z. It's that sort of thing,
yeah,
isn't it? People want to help, and your friends and your family will want to help, but they just don't know how to. So
exactly.
I would say to people, yeah, ask. And if you feel, and the Facebook page that you've got, Karen, and other communities for widows and widowers, ask, if I'm experiencing something, is it natural to do this? Am I feeling alone doing this?
Yeah,
Most of the time people say, no, this is exactly how I felt at that period, or even now, and this is how I got through it. And people share experiences of how you got through it and how you managed to work through some of the grief you were suffering, and that really, really helps.
yeah,
And then you try and think, like I say, I can think a lot more rationally now than just after Val died.
mm,
um,
mm,
so you can think, and when you get those horrible feelings of guilt that, I didn't do this, or I didn't do that, and I didn't do the other, or the feelings that I failed, then you sort of remember all the things that you did do. The little love isn't necessarily buying huge presents. Love is the little things you do on a daily basis. You'd sit there watching the television together. If I mow the lawn, she'd make me a cup of tea. I would give her lifts to and from places. I'd pick her up. You make sure, when Emma and her would go and see musicals in London. Right, let me check the train time to make sure there's no train cancellations, because otherwise you've got to do this, and I'll pick you up, and I'll do this, and and then we book a table or a holiday together, and that sort of thing. So it's all the little things you do on a daily basis, which is the signs of the love, because you found your person who you look at differently to everybody else. You
yeah,
look at somebody who is this is somebody who this is my person for life. The two halves of us make a whole, and that is who we are. We are a unit.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and that's the thing that, again, really hurts.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can't do that, and but you found your person, haven't you? I found my person who I was going to spend the rest of my life with,
yeah, yeah,
and do everything together.
yeah. And then it's the unknown, it's the uncertainty, isn't it, of what's ahead, without
Exactly.
like, who
Yeah,
am I?
exactly.
Where do I
Yeah,
fit? What do I want? Where am I heading?
yeah. What am I going to do? What am I going to do with my life now?
Yeah, big
What am I going to do with
questions.
my life?
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
huge and they're scary, and it's horrible not having the answers, isn't it? Because
yeah.
we like to have the answers. We like to
And
know where
this
we're
is it,
going.
isn't it? This is the thing. It's almost that you know, if you're not careful, it drops into the process, the P word. Everything's a process, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the process is, and I think we mentioned before, Karen. I think I put it on a comment once, was that when people are moving home, that a news agent has a row of magazines when people have babies, a row of magazines when people doing this, a row of magazines. When your spouse, your husband, your wife, your partner dies, there's nothing,
No.
and you'd have to go hunting for it.
Yeah.
This is where these your website and Way and Sue Ryder and Cruise and All the Bereavements are an absolute godsend, because they are somewhere you can speak to like-minded people.
Yeah. And it's that safe space, isn't it? And it's somewhere you
Yeah,
can go and have what you're experiencing sort of normalized, validated,
yeah. It is. It
and,
is the
and
validation, really, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
feel in this way, and it's the other thing we were saying. It's the. I think I watched the Ricky Gervais.
Yes,
Um,
afterlife.
yeah, that's it. And you watch that, and one of the things that he said, I know it's only it's only fiction, but he said, you miss doing nothing because you were doing nothing together rather than doing nothing on your own.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of your life, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
the things you did together as a couple,
Yeah.
watching the television, you know, just general day-to-day life, you now are doing on your own. And that's what, you know, you're doing nothing on your own.
And that's funnily enough, because we had a session on sort of loneliness in my membership last week, and we were talking about that, and it's true. You know, you can usually find somebody to do something with, always, but
Yeah.
finding somebody to do nothing with
Yeah.
is hard. That silent companionship, that just
Yeah,
knowing
exactly.
that
Yeah.
somebody is there by your side, just
Yeah.
cooking, watching telly,
Sitting in the
getting ready for
garden.
bed, sitting in the
Yeah.
garden,
Whatever,
going
whatever.
for a walk.
A,
Yeah,
a comfortable silence rather than uncomfortable silence.
yeah,
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's first thing in the morning,
yeah,
you're not here. Last thing at night, you're not here.
yeah,
That's, you know,
yeah, yeah. It sucks. It sucks.
it
It's
does. It
hard.
does very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Tim, honestly, you're so lovely. You have such a kind
Thank you. That's very
nature.
kind, Karen.
You
Thank you.
do, and you're probably very easy to support because you are open and you do reach
Yeah.
out and ask for help. And I know it's rubbish that it can feel like it's our responsibility to guide others when we're already trying to figure out so
Yeah.
much. But actually, I think it helps us. If we can help others, it helps us to navigate our own journey and stay connected. And not always easy to do, but if we can embrace that part of ourselves, and I can see why you are so well supported, Tim. You
That's
have
very kind. Thank
a
you. But
kind
I just,
heart.
it's well, you try to, you know, it's well, Val always used to say on a daily basis, be as friendly as possible, be as helpful as possible, and do your very best.
Yeah,
And I think if you live by that mantra,
yeah,
you'll go a long way. And that's what we say to Emma,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, and that's what I try and carry on as well. And it is, you just want to, you know, you know that others are newer into the journey, some are older into the journey, but it doesn't change how you feel.
yeah,
And I find talking about it as we've done for the last hour, it does really help because you can, you know, you want to tell people about how wonderful
yeah.
your wife, your husband was, don't you?
You do.
Because it keeps them alive. It keeps them alive.
I also sometimes like to share what a pain Simon was at times
Yeah, yeah,
because it keeps it real. I don't like to
yeah.
put
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And there's things I do, and I suddenly I can hear Val's voice in my head saying, "Why are you doing that?" And sort of like that. Like, you know, when you walk, say, outside in and you put your shoes on to go into the garden, and I walk back in my shoes, and you traipse mud through the kitchen. I think, "Oh right, blimey, you better clear that up." I think so.
It's so
Because
funny.
we've all done it. Yeah, yeah, it is. But it's the, you know, but that's the thing. But that's what you laugh about, isn't it? You laugh about the silly things that you laugh at together.
Exactly, exactly. That's what it's all about. Tim, you have been so wonderful to talk to.
Thank you, Karen.
It's been lovely to hear about Val. She sounds like such a lovely lady who clearly lives on through you now and
Absolutely. Yeah,
through
yeah,
Emma,
absolutely.
which is a wonderful legacy for her to have for sure. And I just appreciate you coming and sharing your story and your challenges
Thank you.
and how you face them, and it's been really lovely, really lovely. I know it
Thank
will
you ever so
help
much.
so many. So
Well, this is it, isn't it? And I'm conscious that, you know, this is one of the reasons why I reached out to you, Karen, is that you do see a lot from widows, but you don't necessarily a lot from widowers.
no,
And you know, it want to try and there are chaps out there who will hopefully be watching this, and it will resonate with them.
yeah,
And you know, so and
yeah.
do what you can. You know, do what you can when you can, and your friends will want to help you as much as they can do.
And this is you living by Val's mantra, isn't it? Like, be
Absolutely.
kind,
Yeah.
be helpful, do your best, and you've just
Absolutely. Yeah.
absolutely done that
Yeah.
and continue to do that. And I
Thank
think
you.
when we can help others, it also helps us find
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
way a little. Yeah, bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you ever so much, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Widow podcast with me, Karen Sutton. If you would like to be part of a supportive community of people who understand your grief, come and join my free Facebook group, Widowed and Rising. And make sure you tune in to the next episode of the Widow podcast.